Welcome to another heart-centered production by Headwater Sage for the Blake Matthew Mindful Memorial Foundation. So Tabatha, Dahn, welcome into the studio. Thanks for being here. I don't know much about you, so I'd like to be prepared with a bunch of background and questions and everything, but this is going to be very much just like a natural conversation. We've known each other for a long time, but we haven't connected really ever, other than 3 years ago for the first Blake's Tinman triathlon. Were one of the first people to reach out after the first Facebook post and offer to donate something through your husband Eric's bike club.
Yeah. So thank you for having me and spreading the word about mental health awareness and how not just adults are really affected, or and veterans and people that have been through severe trauma, but children as well. I think that's something that the community itself as a whole, society, lacks an understanding. Children have trauma, whether it's through school and it's unknown to the parent, or even in their own household or with extended family or close family member friends. A lot of times, it's a brush under the rug. You're fine. Kids pick on each other. It's not a big deal. Suck it up, and that's not a mentality that we want to teach our kids. My children also suffer from severe mental health. And working in a mental health field, we've learned to break that curse of, just suck it up and hide it. We pick up on signs. We have an open dialect at our dining room table. Every night we have family dinner, which has made it really easy for not just my children, but my nieces, nephews, and my children's friends to say, hey, I'm struggling and I don't know what to do. So I think it's really, really great and also very brave of you for putting your story out there to maybe help someone else that's in struggle.
Yeah, it just feels good to share, on both ends. So I think just having this table, this discussion itself is helpful for me and helpful for the guests and the listeners. So thanks again for being here. And remind me what, well, I guess I did not remind me, but enlighten me. What do you do for a living? You work in mental health now?
Up until last year, I did work in mental health. I had a setback due to medical reasons. But I worked in substance use, mental health, and homelessness with our nation's veterans through a couple of different organizations at the state level and the nonprofit levels. So we would work with our most vulnerable population, a veteran. And the veterans that I worked with generally struggled with severe substance use as a coping mechanism for their mental health. A lot of times, the rural veteran population seems to be kind of left aside. They don't have the resources, whether it's through themselves, family members, or the community, to get to facilities such as Health and Human Services or the Veteran Service Officer to access mental health care. Or they're not considered a veteran at federal level, so they don't get VA health care.
And what's considered mental health care?
What's considered mental health care? Yeah, and that's the thing across the board is, so whether we're working in our physical health or our mental health, it's all encompassing, right? And a lot of times our physical health will take a toll if our mental health is struggling. And there's a lot of things that it's a huge in-depth process to be considered a veteran at the federal level. And that's a story for another day.
Really? So you're not talking about disability status. You're talking about
in general. So like
being
a Coast Guard reservist that did 30 years in service was considered not active duty, no matter how many times they were out guarding our waters, right?
So they can't be, they're not considered veterans by definition?
Correct. So if you are 25 years in the reserve and you never get activated, you are not considered veteran enough for healthcare status. So the Veteran Outreach and Recovery Program, VORP for short, through the Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs, saw that as a huge, huge need. out there. So what they did
This
is
gap between well,
federal veteran status
I see. Yeah.
for utilizing benefits. What they did is they would work hand in hand with local organizations, nonprofits, other funding organizations to get these veterans the mental health care that they needed. Because PTSD and other mental health struggles, whether it's bipolar, schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, aren't just service related, right? It could stem from childhood trauma. And I am a firm believer in if we work on our mental health and we learn coping mechanisms, we can correct a lot of the substance use because substance use, generally speaking, is a way to self-medicate and just kind of keep pushing down what's erupting inside that we don't understand, and your generation, our generation, the generation prior to us and for years, that's what we've been told to do, right? Just brush it under the rug. There's nothing wrong with you. Suck it up and carry on. And instead of being taught how to work through that, right? And you're not given tools. So that's what the Veteran Outreach and Recovery Program did, is we would find the veterans that were the most vulnerable, whether they were living under the bridges, living on our streets, in shelters, or just in very rural population areas where they couldn't access benefits. And we'd work with them side by side with a clinician, and get them the resources that they needed. So immediate needs, whether it was getting them off the street and into shelter. And then from there, we would do screenings on them. So whether we were doing screenings for just your behavioral health pre-screen, right? And then how they marked on that would determine if we were doing one for anxiety or like a GAD-7, or if we were doing an audit C for alcohol use, or if we were going to do the Columbia for suicide. And we do screens for PTSD, things of that nature, which would give us kind of a gauge of where to start as far as resources for them. The program did start out as a pilot program, and it finally was given permanent status. I want to say 2019. Dates are hard for me.
By who?
By the governor.
Okay.
So
State.
yep, from at the state level. So they were considered finally a program that we didn't have to continuously prove that we were beneficial to get funded.
Which governor did that? What time? When was that?
Evers.
Okay.
Evers actually did that. So the program has made amazing leaps and bounds. But 11 of us covered all 72 counties in the state. So we had a very, very heavy workload. We traveled to where they were at. We met the veteran where they were. Yes, there were days where I put 500 miles on. But
how many do you know? So 72 counties. How long did the program?
it's
When you were there, how long were you there?
I was there from 19 to 24.
So you were there 5 years.
Yeah.
And you said, how many veterans were served?
I couldn't give you an exact
Roughly,
number. Roughly, I know that because we received an award in 2020. It was the Abraham Lincoln Award of Excellence, which gives state programs recognition for the work that they're doing to service veterans in a way that no other programs are doing, right?
Filling gaps.
Filling gaps and needs with mental health, suicide prevention, things of that nature. And I know it was over 1,000 veterans that we were able to serve as just finally a permanent program.
In a year, or in that pilot
in that
first
year,
5
in
years?
1 year.
In 1 year.
1 year.
1,000 veterans in 1 year.
I know if we go on, if you happen to go on the WDVA website, the demographic information is there from going forward even.
Go on what website?
WDVA, so Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs.
Okay.
Yep. So,
And I mean, that's going to be a huge website. So what?
right. So then you just look at the VORP, V for Victor, ORP, Veteran Outreach Recovery Program, and then there's information.
Yeah. Okay. Updates or whatever, what they're doing,
Yep.
what their
Yep,
impact.
and if they're expanding, things of that nature.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, there can't be enough help given towards veterans just because of what the oh, what conditions they deal with, and I feel like there's also, there's other, like, look at policemen.
Yes, absolutely.
They deal with a lot more on, I think, on average than the average vet. Not depending on what moment in time the veteran is enlisted in service, that varies a lot. But a cop, especially in a urban area, busy area, and even in a rural area, they're just always doing things related to, oh, just dark, nasty, ugly stuff.
Yeah, it's repetitive trauma is what it
Yeah,
is, that
yeah.
they're experiencing day in and day out. Um and as much as they have, a lot of times they offer that decompression period after, let's say, some kind of tragic event that the veteran or the police officer encounter, right? A lot of times it's short lived, okay? And it's stigmatized, right? They don't want the full help because they're afraid that their coworkers or their comrades are going to look at them as weak.
Sure.
And
I did the assessment. I'm good. I'm fine.
yep, I'm
Yeah.
fine. And it sneaks back up on you. In the line of work that I was in, working with severe mental health and substance use, um, there were times where I would never want to relive the situation that I walked into. And then there's times where I would do it all over again. You build a rapport with these men and women, and they trust you, and they trust to share their vulnerabilities with you, and they trust that you're going to protect their family. And I struggled with that a lot when I would find some veterans that had unalived themselves.
Wait, say that again.
They had unalived
Oh,
themselves.
yeah. Okay.
So they would call and be like, "You're still coming for an appointment?" "Yep, I'm 10 minutes down the road." And then I would find them in a terrible situation. Yeah,
You would find them dead,
I would.
or halfway dead because they have attempted it but not successful at it.
Correct.
Wow. How many times? I mean, not that that matters. Enough.
I know more than I would like to.
Yeah.
More than once, and more than I will ever care to discuss.
Yeah.
But I struggled with that for a long
course.
time. Like they knew, they were doing well. They knew I was on my way. Like why would they do that knowing I was coming to help them? And it took a veteran who was a family member to sit down with me and say, Tabitha, that was an honor. And I just looked at him and I said, "What do you mean it was an honor?" They trusted you enough that they knew that you would not allow for this to fall onto their family, that you would make sure that their children didn't find them and their spouses didn't find them,
Mm-hmm.
and that you would make sure that they were safe too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had to look at it differently, as much as it hurt. And I know, I can't save them all, right? And that was another thing is, Tabitha, you can't save them all. Quit putting so much effort in.
Don't you love it when someone just like out of the blue says something that doesn't make sense, but that makes you think, and then it gives you a new perspective, and it's like exactly what you needed.
It was exactly what I needed.
Because we get stuck in these thought loops of, I don't know what emotions were do you remember feeling when that would happen? I mean, did you feel like, oh my God, like what
Adrenaline
what
kicked
could I have
in.
done?
And no,
different, or
honestly,
any
it
of
wasn't
that?
so much what I could have done differently. It was the why me? Why are you picking me to find you when I'm coming?
Because you knew that was part of the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when they share their vulnerabilities, part of that is sharing their suicidal ideations, and if they have a plan, if they've ever attempted that plan before, and the veterans that were my clients that I had found over the years in situations such as that were long time clients, where they had overcome substance use and their criminal record through the veterans court systems, and they were doing really, really well for themselves. They went back to school and they were running businesses, or they bought homes, and they were partaking back within their community and their families again, and they were giving back. And I'm going, we were doing so well, like what? It's like, what the hell? Why? It is
Oh
why,
yeah. Well, I get that.
you
I
know.
went-
And it wasn't until family friend, sat me down, and he was 3-time combat veteran, and he says, Tabatha, that was an honor. You should feel honored that they trusted you enough to protect their family too,
yeah.
and they just didn't have the strength to carry on anymore.
And that is a huge protection for them to not have to go through I mean, it's traumatic enough when you lose a family member to suicide, but if you're the one that finds them, and that's a whole different thing. There's a whole different level. And you had mentioned with kids, the mental health issues we deal with children, because of children and their trauma that they may have experienced. But it's also like we think of trauma, or that word, as being like a single event, or like something that
Catastrophic.
yeah, catastrophic, or just out of the norm, that happens, that sends a shockwave through our emotional body, and our imprints our memory, and becomes either a core memory or a buried memory. Something just has like an impact on us, right? Trauma, like a single event. But it also is so much like the routine, the habits, the conditioning, or the programming, whatever word you want to use, of just like the new way that kids are growing up, what we all have access to. And yeah, because when we were kids, we
play and kick the can, right?
yeah, I
Throw
feel
balls.
I feel like our generation has a duty, because the generation older than us, I mean, a lot of them have adopted technology, right? But I feel like they had to adopt it a lot later in life. When we were in school, I just think back to like 8th grade, 9th grade, the first computers were coming out. Macintosh came up with and then by the time we graduated, computers were half the size they were when we started with them 5-6 years before that. And then as soon as we were done with school, cell phones were there. There were cell phones when we were in school, but not the smartphones. And so we've witnessed in our young adult, mature adult, we have witnessed this analog to digital shift. And I think there's so much.
We're the middle of that cultural shift,
Yeah.
that technology shift.
Yeah.
So, like you're saying, we have this duty to those younger, right? Our children, or even that little generation between our children. My daughter's 24. I had her young, so like it's hard for me to say, but like that group of kids that are 24 to, kindergarten, right, and going beyond that as they're coming into the world, that as living both sides of it, that's where we have that duty to kind of bridge that gap for them, that things aren't always about the overwhelmingness of this technology, and we can still find some kind of enjoyment in life if we put that down and we try some other things.
Yeah, and we're one of we are the last generation that remembers what that was like to grow up like that. And I'm not saying that we have the answers by any means, because we're also victim to the new technologies ourselves. So it's an interesting time to be a parent, that's for sure.
It is.
So your daughter is 24.
Yeah, I have a daughter that's 24, a son that just turned 19, and one that just turned 16.
Okay. So my son Blake was 21 in 2020. So yeah, he'd be 25. And you talk about veterans that have got back on their feet and give back to the community and seem like they're doing so good, and they're smiling, and all of a sudden they take their life. They end their life. And that was the same shock and surprise as with Blake. You would have never suspected it. He wasn't. I mean, now looking back, I can see, because he never really showed signs of depression that I saw. Other than looking back, there was some times he would sleep for extended periods of time. But when you would see him in person, he just never seemed down, really.
Probably happy.
Yeah, happy. But he was antsy. He was like high energy, always bopping from this place, couldn't stay one place very long. And looking back, I can see now that high energy was an expression of his anxiety, and the shadow of depression end of that just wasn't visible to anyone, maybe besides his dog. So it was just a complete shock because he was the life of the party. He was funny. He had his life. He had the world, by the hand. He had a great job. He was engaged to a beautiful fiance. He had a dream job. He, I mean, yeah.
And
So
those are the ones that we, everybody says that we, reach out if you need anything. Reach out if you. I have a motto that reach in, just reach in. You may not notice something is off with your strong friend that's always there for everybody else, or the one that's always seems like they're the life of the party, so you don't feel like they're struggling with anything. They're the ones that aren't going to reach out to you and say, I need help. I am that person. I'm the giver, I'm the doer, I'm the helper, I save everybody. In the motorcycle club world, I am known as Mama Troll because I mom everybody, I take care of everybody. I hold a lot of vulnerabilities for people. My husband's phone will ring in the middle of the night and it'll be, can I talk to your wife, please? And I'll sit down and I will talk somebody for hours and hours and hours back into a good place to where I'm driving at the same time to meet them. And from there, we decide what we need to do, and that's the whole, it's extremely stressful and secondary trauma, like I now have compassion trauma. So
when did you realize that?
a long time ago. Yeah. But I'm also great at giving advice, and I'm really terrible at accepting my own. I can help everybody else, but I really struggle to help myself, and know that I need to reach in to other people and go like, I know I did this for you, but now I need your help.
So you're saying motto being instead of reaching out, reaching in. Are you referring to an individual reaching into themselves, or are you referring to you reaching into an individual?
Both.
Okay.
Both. So reach into your strong friends and the happy friends, and the ones that maybe are suddenly all of a sudden like they don't really want to go out and they're distant, or they're just you. If you notice, like you listen to your intuition and your spidey senses, we know that something's off about somebody. Like if we listen to it, we know it's there.
Yeah, but then I don't know. Maybe my spidey senses aren't great.
Most people aren't in tune to them. We turned them off a long time ago.
Well, I feel like I have false alarms sometimes,
and that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, that is okay. I guess.
It is okay because I would rather have a false alarm.
Yeah, than not say anything.
And then not say anything at all and have to carry that weight. I get the Tabatha. You can't save them all. So I refer back to Susie and the Starfish story. Do you know that? Do you know that story?
Susie and the Starfish? Remind me.
Okay.
Sounds vaguely familiar.
Mm-hmm. We had a teacher that told us the story in high school.
Okay,
actually.
I might have been paying attention.
Mm-hmm. And what it was is, you're going along the ocean, walking the beach, and this old man sees this young girl, Susie, and the tide's just gone out, and she sees all these starfish, and she's picking them up one by one and tossing them back into the ocean. And he tells her, you can't save them all. She looks at him, reaches down and picks up the next starfish, and she tosses it back into the ocean. And she says, but I just saved that one, right? You don't have to save everybody.
Yeah, one at a time.
One at a time, right? Well, I brought something today. The last veteran that I spent 28 hours with, talking him off a village. The last veteran I helped before I had to turn my resignation due to illness.
That was in the gun?
That was in the gun. I got him to give it to me. He still reaches out to me to this day. He's doing amazing.
How long ago was that?
That would have been a year and a half ago.
Oh.
And this is my own reminder now that every life is valuable, including my own. Because working in mental health and being through the traumatic events that I have been through and witnessed throughout my entirety of my life, it gets hard. It gets really, really hard.
Yeah, it's
and I will never be the advocate that says, I know what it's like. I know what it feels like. I can empathize with you because I've been in a boat with the same kind of struggles, but our waters are very different. So my waters may be different, but I can empathize with the feeling that things are just too hard.
And you have ears.
And
I mean, a lot of times that's what people need.
yeah,
Is just that ear to bend. You know, you're a light worker, right?
yeah,
Is what you are, and I people like you are rare. My stepmom is like you, where she will pour her complete heart into helping as many people as she can, and I'm sure she knows the starfish story.
I'm certain she does.
Yeah, and yeah, and she knows a lot of people, in because of her job and just her personality, and I'm sure you found that too. Like when you have that vibe, you attract people to open up to you, and that's a gift that you have.
Hmm.
But it can, I guess you also have to need to know how to set up your own boundaries and know, um, reminding yourself to check Tabitha's cup. Is Tabitha's cup full? Because you can't, or you can, but you shouldn't be pouring from a half empty cup.
Cup. Yeah, and that's where a lot of people like myself and your stepmom struggle. Um, we we struggle to set boundaries because I have a cousin, my cousin Casey. She keeps telling me all the time that empathy without boundaries is self destruction.
Yeah,
And it took me a long time to realize that, how very right that is. But I still struggle as a doer and just a busy person, always wanting to help everybody and do everything. And I just like to, I want to make a difference, you know? I feel like that's why I was put on this earth. And to have that kind of ripped away from me when I got sick, it's been very hard to slow me down. And so I'm learning slowly to set boundaries for myself that um, stress is the biggest cause for flare up for myself. And I can't help as many people as I would love to. Um, my knowledge level is still there. So, like, let's say someone on Buy Sell Trade page, or Reason Community page is homeless. They don't have to be a veteran, but homeless in general, or they're looking for a resource. I've worked in 15 counties in the state. I know a lot of resources. I have a resource file. I just look it up and I'll copy and paste it in there. And hopefully that in turn, maybe if it doesn't even help them because they don't see it at the time, or they're not qualified for the help that that resource I provided offers. But there could be somebody else that sees that question, who is afraid to ask the question themselves, and then they see the answers. You know, so I have to look at it as I can still help people from a distance without overstepping the boundaries that I have to have in place for my own physical and mental health.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult,
Yeah. Well,
but
at least for now. I mean,
but if we can get a good med regimen going, I mean,
because
hopefully we can
you
get
don't
things.
look sick. What do you mean by you got sick?
So I have systemic lupus, and I've been battling and documenting since 2017 all these strange symptoms. Um, Getting told that there's nothing wrong with me, you're crazy, you're just getting old, it's all in your head, like you're just stressed, it's this, and that, like gaslighting by doctors, basically.
So what were some of these symptoms?
Um, Chronic fatigue, brain fog. I would just sleep and sleep and sleep for days. My muscles and joints would hurt so bad I'd walk. I feel like my feet were breaking in half. I would get these dizzy spells. I get disoriented. I see floaters. I'd have chronic chest pain. I get winded really easy, and there was no reason for it, not at all. And finally, after our house fire, and we moved to down by Richland Center. My primary doctor, immunology was her major in med school, and she looked at all of my stuff and she went, "You've got an autoimmune disease." And I went, "Well, yeah, I have a couple, like, 'cause I have eczema and, you know, pretty mild in comparison." And she says, "No, there's something more severe going on there." And she ran my ANA, and so she did a bunch of different blood work, and so I have systemic lupus.
So she determined that by blood work?
Between blood work and all of the symptoms that I have.
Okay.
So I've got photosensitivity. I've had that my entire life, but I, if I honestly could pronounce the type of photosensitivity I have, I would tell you. But It's more severe than that. It's actually affecting my mitochondrial DNA makeup. Yeah, that's what like. I didn't believe him either. I had to look it up. I was like, these people are crazy. But it makes me to where I am literally cognitive dysfunction. Like I can't focus. I can't talk. I can't read words on paper sometimes. Like it's pretty terrible.
What is lupus? I have no idea.
So it's an autoimmune disease so systemic lupus, autoimmune disease that attacks every part of my body. So all of my my body's essentially attacking itself. So my organs, my heart, my lungs, my brain, my kidneys, my muscles, my blood vessels, my joints, every bit of me is under attack. And it's made it very, very hard to function. There's days where you look at me and you're like, there's nothing wrong with her. She's perfectly fine. But you don't know that on a pain scale of 1 to 10, I'm at a like 35
Right now.
right now.
So you've just come to accept this pain that's like seems to be like it's not going to go away.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot we can do with it.
How many people have lupus?
A lot of people actually have lupus. I'd have to look up the statistics, but it's more common in women. And there's a lot of things that also play into it too. So I've been doing a little bit of my own research. And so severe trauma survivors, those who've lived in fight or flight for a very long time, domestic violence survivors, tend to be more susceptible to lupus. African American women are actually have it at a higher rate than Caucasian women, but it's more among women than it is men. And there are different types of lupus too, and I can't even get into all of those, but I'm just trying to focus on what I've got going on.
Yeah.
And recently, it's started to take a toll on my brain. So you can have strokes and seizures because of it, and I've been having small seizures, which is very new. I haven't really disclosed that, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. And I also I lose train of thought. I can't get words out of my mouth sometimes. It's actually functionally, like cognitively wise, today's a good day. I I can seem like I'm perfectly fine, and then the next minute I'm falling over. Um, so kidney function, your liver function, like that's also something that generally you end up with a kidney transplant before it fully attacks, everything else. My Raynaud's syndrome or phenomenon, where my fingers, my toes, like my ears, my nose, my extremities, will go white and blue because to really extreme hot or cold temperatures, which is because my blood vessels in the extremities are not wide enough for blood flow like they're supposed to be. I get petechiae, so it's where your blood surfaces to your skin. Quite frequently, that's something that happens. Chronic hives, insomnia. I don't sleep but 3 or 4 hours a night, maybe. And you can be perfectly fine, and you're going to go somewhere, and then you're in the middle of enjoying maybe a dinner, and somebody flashes a light or a loud noise, or it's just too much noise, and I can't function. All of a sudden, my body just shuts down.
So it's wavy. It comes in waves and
Yes.
goes
So sporadic.
unpredictable.
Yes, and unpredictable. You don't ever know. It's been a change.
When did the biggest changes take place?
So it was gradually, but it would have. So we lost our house
In a fire.
in a fire on Labor Day. It's 2025, right? 2022. I had to
really?
think. Yeah. And then we finally managed to get into a home. But during that process, like, it was almost like losing somebody else. I mean, I lived in that house for 20 years. I raised my kids in that house. my dad and my best friend, we put the walls up ourselves, and I made all the trim work, and like it was so devastating. Um, it was like a loss of a life at that point, the dramatic part of it. And in the middle of a market where houses were going for 4 times what they were even worth, and you're fighting over them, and it was just extremely stressful. And that is literally what just kind of set everything on fire in my body. Like then it all just came at once. And I was doing some research, and like major tragic events, catastrophes, infections, viral, bacterial, tend to manifest the symptoms into this one big ball of fire, essentially, and it just all comes on at once. And I tried to work through it for about 6 months, and I got to a point where I did trainings on veteran suicide, and I couldn't do my QPR trainings. Like I could not read the paper. I would be going to see a client, let's say, all the way up in Buffalo County, and I would get lost and I wouldn't know where I was at on roads that I traveled all the time. And I knew at that point it was something that I had to step away from doing in order to heal myself, and figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's been extremely detrimental as a human being, that the work that I did made my soul glow, and I've been doing it for years. So it was hard to walk away. It's still hard. But I volunteer and I try and do what I can do.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, so but part of your original career in that you loved so much, that was also high stress,
Yeah.
demanding on you to give.
Mm-hmm.
And then that came to a stop. It was also some sort of loss or grieving taking place because of the loss of that career that you had a give and take relationship with, that fulfilled you, but also maybe caused or contributed to the lead up of this diagnosis. I hate
It did.
words.
You're honest. You're being honest, and it's hard to get it out, but you're 100% right. Between domestic violence survivor, living in the house, I call it the house of hell, even though it was devastating to lose. For years after I divorced my ex-husband, due to domestic violence, so chronic fight or flight, and then working in a very high stress, full career path, manifested it, for sure.
So
I'm
now,
a firm believer in that.
so now that you recognize I need to take a break from this, and I'm going to reach in and see what I can do to reduce my stress. Because stress is like, well, it's like everything, right? It's everything. It's like the stress is in the mind, but then the stress in the mind causes the body to react, and then the body fails because of the stress that is caused, but because the mind is allowing it, or our habits or rituals, routines, whatever, the external influences that come at us, and the phenomenon, the experiences that we have that lead up to this point where it takes over our body and makes us sick. But then you have these symptoms that are so like broad, or could be misdiagnosed, or just missed, or we don't believe you, or it's like it's something that can't be tested, and it
takes 6 to 10 years to get a diagnosis for lupus.
Sure. And when you're at a point where you don't know what it is,
Mm-hmm.
you must be just desperate for a diagnosis. Like, what is this? But then
It was.
But then it's and then you get it, and it's like, okay, this is a word, LUPUS,
Yeah.
and then you Google it, and the doctor gives you some handouts, and it tells you what it is, and then you realize that it's this huge range that's different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And what do they say about reversing it or curing it?
There is no cure.
Okay. How many times have you heard that?
I've heard that over and over and over again. However, I've been looking into a lot of holistic approaches. And I have literally documented food journals, things of that nature, to just see what triggers my flare-ups, what makes me feel better, what I can do and can't do. Call me crazy, whatever you want, but I've done a lot of research on autoimmune diseases, and a lot of it they say starts in your gut. So gut health, right? So I'm going to try that route. I'm on a medication now that the doctors also use as cancer treatment. So it's very hard on my body, very hard on my body, and it's not really helping. I mean, I don't have as many dizzy spells, but it's also not summertime.
Well, it's
In the summertime, it's worse. So I don't really know.
and at a certain point, these pharmaceuticals, like they have their place. Sometimes we really need them. Sometimes they provide relief, and we're so thankful for them. But we're in this care system that's called healthcare, but it's disease care. So they say, okay, hi Tabatha, you have a disease. It's called lupus. We're going to care for that disease. In order to care for lupus, we're going to give you this, assess your symptoms. Oh, you have this, we'll give you this. And then it's a disease care regimen.
And then it's going to cause all these excessive side effects that now we have to treat those too.
Oh.
And I would rather not be a treatable side effect. I don't want to be that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that.
Yeah, I wish the word healthcare didn't have that association right now with pharmaceuticals, because in our opinion here at the foundation is that healthcare begins at reaching in.
Correct.
And that there's so many holistic helpers out there. They're teachers, like, and they don't prescribe drugs that are $600 a bottle that you need to buy every month. They teach practices and tools, and we call it a tool, but a tool you have to reach in, get it in your toolbox, and then you put the toolbox away. So you only bring it out when you need that tool.
Coping mechanisms.
But coping mechanism, or just a new practice, a new habit, a new ritual.
Yes.
So there's these
Learning new forms of life, essentially, that you're going to practice every day, that are going to in turn help to it's hard to explain. Give you a better quality of life overall, not just physically but mentally, right?
Yeah, to reduce your stress, to clear your mind, and then and it's whole pie, it's whole picture, right? Like what we put in our bodies versus what we allow our thoughts to control, versus what our environment is, which is what our social life is, maybe what our spiritual connection is, and our career and our habits are everything. There's so many angles to come at health. You have to come at it from like a holistic picture, whole WHOLE. And we have deeply embedded into the concept of what word am I looking for? The process of how our foundation grants work. When someone applies for a wellness grant, one of the options is called holistic health. There's some different names for it. Holistic health coaching. Sometimes life coaching can overlap with that, and nutrition coaching can overlap. But holistic health coaching is like this big picture.
Yeah.
And
so when I worked with veterans, we used horses an awful lot. And there's a couple of horse farms around here locally that we worked hand in hand with, that provided that holistic approach, healing approach.
Oh, see, we need them as wellness partners, because
I got a connection.
That's awesome. Because we have that as an option. When someone applies, they can check the box for animal therapy, but we don't have a wellness partner that provides it. So.
I've got a couple of them in my back pocket. I'll give you the information when we're finished.
And we've had 3 or 4 applicants that have requested it. So sometimes an applicant comes in and they tell their story. We do an interview. This usually takes about an hour. It's a private interview unless they want to go public, but we do that just to get to know them better, see what different sort of wellness treatments or therapies they've experienced, what they may have some misunderstandings about. And then we look at our pool of wellness providers, and then we connect some dots and issue a Tinman coin,
Yes,
which
I
is
was reading about that.
wellness
How
grant.
phenomenal.
And then we're encouraging to do the work, right? Because there's no magic pill, as you know.
Right.
And if they attend their sessions that they're granted, They come back in, provide feedback. They're given an opportunity to share their story on the podcast, so we can showcase our impact results to the community. But then they're incentivized to get another coin because we do a 3-phase coin. So we can go deeper and deeper, or maybe a lot of times the first coins are just some samples of different things, and they can go dip their toes in and see what jives with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just so stoked about it. So
It's exciting that it's exciting for you to see that tragedy can also have an impact on the opposite spectrum, right? You know,
oh, absolutely.
your family suffered an extreme tragedy, you know, that we wouldn't wish on anybody. But you're using that to put good back into the community, make awareness, and maybe help that next starfish, you know?
Well, and hopefully people that come through, and this is so new that this hasn't quite happened yet, but I know we're close to it, is people that have come through the Tinman Coin Wellness Grant program. There's so many offers to come back and help. We want to give back. We want to volunteer. And so to peer to peer, you know, I've been there. I've been where you were. I was there a year ago, and then, you know, helping others come through.
So it's ironic that, you know, you call it the Tinman coin. So in the veteran world, challenge coins.
Okay.
And I'm not a veteran. Let's just make that very clear. But I come from a military family, and I've worked with them for a long time. But that is, you know, they have coins that they give to their, you know, like this Marine's over here and this one's over there, and they're kind of eyeballing each other. And once a Marine, always a Marine. Keep that in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
And he's like, he presents this challenge coin. And I challenge you to, you know, for whatever the challenge is. So in my line of work, we actually had challenge coins that we gave our veterans. When they would reach a certain step, we challenged them to grow to the next one. Challenge coins are very, very symbolic in the veteran community. So your program, unbeknownst to you, by using that term, opens the door to a whole nother demographic of human being that may not get services somewhere else.
Yeah.
Through the coin, the challenge coin.
Yeah, I love it. And you know, we set this up to begin with thinking people are going to come to get help with mental health who can't afford it. But we quickly realized that finance is not always the barrier to receiving mental health treatment. It can be social barriers. It can be just not knowing what different options are out there. Because when you go to, and I'm not a veteran either, and I am making a big assumption here, but I think it's a pretty safe one. When you go as a veteran to the Veterans Affairs and tell them, I want to improve my mental health, they're not conducting the interview the way it ought to be. They're not changing the way they have conducted interviews for years because it's a government policy of how they do everything from A to Z. And so when you say like veterans have gone to the VA hospital, or maybe they haven't had enough veteran status, they fall in limbo, so they haven't gotten the help they need. But how often does a veteran go into the VA to get the help that they want or that they think they need, but then they're not given opportunity to get the help that they need?
It's 4:00 and we checked all the boxes, but
the pill,
I gotta go. So maybe come back tomorrow, but you're gonna blow your brains out in the parking lot. Yes.
Well, there's got to be a pill. Okay, I can think. You're on this pill. Let's add this pill to get in here. I want to talk about this emotional spiral here. These are negative emotions, and you could look at like suicide lives down here, and then these are positive emotions, and you could say death exists at both ends. There's suicide, death of a beating heart, and then ego death is up here. But boredom and calmness is in the midline. And so when somebody is experiencing, say, bipolar, and they bounce back and forth between being ultra depressed and and sleeping all the time to being manic,
Manic.
and energized. And it feels good to be manic. I can speak from personal experience. But then these different pharmaceuticals that are out there bring you down to this midline and don't allow you to feel the emotions necessarily
You're zombie.
beyond. Yeah, the boredom is zombie line. And so there's plenty of drugs out there that are legal and prescribed by doctors that bring you to this equilibrium line, and to no fault of theirs, they're not trained to do this.
Correct.
But this is such an important diagram, because you were saying a lot of times you were talking about shadows or reflections of opposites, and for every negative emotion there is it's a shadow of another emotion. Oftentimes guilt is a result of not having this
Yes.
with yourself, or it's
Just like people who give, right? They don't give because they have much. They give because they know what it's like to have nothing, right? So it's the opposite, right? So I continue to give. I don't have a lot to give, but I feel like everybody has something to give, and it's called time, right? So if I just give a little bit of time to listen, or if I just give a little bit of time to type in that resource, or, that's because I know what it's like to be at that point where I have nothing. And that might be all that I needed to bring me to the next day. So I wake up the next morning to give me the gumption to go on the next day, and fight that battle. A lot of times you see where, like, I believe that your family physician should not be prescribing you mental health medications.
are they? I don't even know.
Yes, they do. So your PCP, my PCP even is like, well, I'd like to prescribe you something for anxiety. No. What can you tell me about anxiety? What can you tell me about all the side effects of those medications that are going to either, like on your emotional spiral here, they're going to make me be at this borderline zombie level? Are they going to put me in a manic state? Or are they going to interfere with the PTSD and CPTSD that I already have got going on and make me think about all of that stuff and magnify it, right? And then I'm going to be down here on the descending end of that. They need to either work hand in hand with a mental health professional that's trained in that understands that, or you need to have a mental health professional being your prescriber also for mental health medications. All too often, we're going to go through this one with the PCP, and then we're going to give you this med and that one and this one and this one and this one and this one. But we're only going to start with this one because maybe somebody in your family suffers from depression, and this is a drug that worked good for them. But that person was your 50-year-old grandmother, and this person is a 10-year-old child. Do you think that they're at the same level of development, hormonal, to be taking the same med as their 50-year-old grandmother? I don't know. I mean, I'm not a professional either, but I've seen far too many personal and professional situations where that wasn't a good idea, and then you get them in to see somebody who is an expert, so to speak, in their field, go, wow, why were you even on this to begin with, along with these 17 other meds?
And why don't they ever ask anybody about diet or stress management or
vitamins, vitamin D.
Well, and
deficiency right there of vitamin D and D, B, magnesium, like all of that plays an essential role in our mental health. So if you're deficient in those things, like if you just have a vitamin D deficiency, which 95% of the population has, especially living in colder climates, Wisconsin, if we up our vitamin D intake, that helps our mental health tremendously. That was the thing I used often. Like when I'm on the phone with a client and I'm trying to talk them off a ledge, I'm like, let's go for a walk together. Let's go outside, get some sunshine, just breathe, just breathe as I'm driving there. And I'm going, are you outside? I didn't hear the door shut yet. I don't hear the neighbor's dog barking. I don't hear the birds chirping. Get them outside, and that plays a huge role in it too. So like, why are we not looking at that first? We're just going to prescribe meds.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we are, right? It's just that when we think of healthcare, we think of the hospital, we think of the clinic that we've all gone to for so long that's been there. And again, there's no fault to anyone who runs a hospital or works at a hospital, administrator, doctor, nurse, or anything.
Oh, absolutely
Because
not.
they are there. They chose that profession because they want to help people. They learned in the institutions that they learned in, and they have to follow rules. And sometimes you get a maverick here and there that will do something outside of the box. But it's changing. I met a 85-year-old man about 2 months ago at the House of Wellness in Baraboo,
Mm-hmm.
and I asked him. I said, I got a question for you. When you get to be in your 80s, do you find yourself thinking a lot less? And he says, well, I don't really know. I haven't thought about it. He said, but I don't have to take very many pills. He's like, I'm only on one pill. And I said, well, that seems like really good. A lot of people have like the big old trays Monday through Friday.
Yeah, morning, noon, and night.
And he said, I've never liked pills. You can tell he's in so much pain. He walks really slow, but he's doing what he can to get in the hot tub and move around and stretch every day. And he said, I was talking to my doctor in Sauk, and she was telling me that all these pills and stuff, they're going away. And I was listening to him, but I was expecting him to say stuff I've heard before.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wait a second, did you just say that your doctor told you that all these pharmaceuticals are going away? And he said, yeah. She said, that's what's coming down the pipe. That's the wave of the future. And I was like, well, that makes me feel so good to hear you say that is what your doctor in Sauk Prairie just told you.
Yep. There are a few doctors in Reedsburg. Well, she's a nurse practitioner, and then a couple in Richland Center that are pushing more of that holistic. Let's try this first. Let's get you outside. What are you eating? Eat some more greens. What is it that you're not fulfilling internally to make you happy, to fill your cup, right? So if we fill our cup and we're happy, we're not depressed. We don't need a pill. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't, because there are situations where absolutely there's a huge chemical imbalance, and we do need to do something about that.
Yeah, thank God for those tools.
Yes, right. But I don't feel like that's for everybody. I'll use my son as an example. He kept saying, Mom, they keep wanting to, I'm depressed, and I'm not. I have anxiety and ADHD, and I just need an avenue and an outlet where people understand that that's what I've got going on.
I want to talk about it.
And I want to talk about it. I don't want to be given this pill where I'm at this zombie level.
Well, and sometimes...
And that was huge for him at 12 years old.
That
to
is.
say, Mom, I don't want to take these pills. They're just, and I could see it. I could see it all over him. But at the same time, I didn't know much about the child brain. I worked with adults. So that was a whole nother learning curve.
He was listening to his body.
But he was listening to his body.
That's amazing.
And he's going, Mom, I'm doing what you told us to do. Thank you.
Awesome.
You listened. You're 12. What?
Well, and I can think of how I would maybe have reacted when I was 12 or 14, under the thinking that you have a headache, you take an aspirin, you have anxiety, well, go to the doctor. Maybe there's a pill that'll fix that. And so a lot of us go into the hospital, the clinic, or the doctor thinking that there is a pill. You watch the commercials on TV, and there is a magic pill for everything. Mm-hmm. You don't need to worry about your diet or your exercise, your stress management, or your practice of presence or anything, because there's, and I would love that someday, and I know this is coming, and it's already here, there's going to be those doctors that take their prescription pad and throw it in the garbage. And when they tell you they have anxiety, they'll ask, why? Let's get to why do you have anxiety?
It's a matter of what has happened to you, and not a matter of what is wrong with you. What things are the root cause of your anxiety? Were you not given a space growing up to express your feelings or to say, I don't really like to do this event? Can we try something else? Like let's say you're on a family outing and you have a fear of water, right? And it's because maybe you almost drowned in the bathtub when you were 2 and your parents don't know that, right? That they just doused you with too much water and you got it in your mouth and scared the shit out of you.
Yeah.
Because that's in your subconscious. I mean, that's buried deep in your brain.
Yeah.
But now we're on a canoeing trip and your child is 10 and they're like, I don't want to be in the water. I don't like the water. And now they have anxiety surrounding that. Do they have a permanent anxiety disorder? Or do we just need to figure out why they're fearful of the water and accept that they're fearful of the water? Like, okay, well, you don't enjoy the canoeing part of it. So what we'll do is dad'll stay here with you at the campground, or dad'll go with the other siblings and we'll go paddling, and mom will stay with you at the campground, and we'll go on a nature hike and see if we can find any artifacts. There's arrowheads all over the place. I mean, just something a little different that they're more comfortable in. Okay, now we just ease their anxiety. Right?
Yeah.
They didn't social, like an animal, for example, right? You have to socialize the animal around people and other animals. Otherwise, they're going to be on the defensive and the attack all the time when they're introduced to new people or new places or other animals, right? So if you didn't socialize your child, now they're in a big group of people. Are they going to have anxiety? Probably, because they don't know how to interact among other people because they weren't shown. They weren't given that opportunity, So like, I wholeheartedly, like, a big part of me goes, a lot of what we have going on as adults, especially those that have very poor coping mechanisms, so substance use, and addiction. And addiction isn't just substances, right? It could be gambling, sex addiction, it's broad spectrum. Are because we're trying to find ways to block out something that keeps manifesting from early on. So, like you said, people think as childhood trauma is something super tragic and dramatic and, right? But it could just be as I don't want to say small because none of it's insignificant or small. But in comparison, like my mom and dad are busy all the time working, and there wasn't time for us to sit down and have a family dinner and talk, right? So it's like you felt abandoned.
Yeah.
You weren't, nobody recognized you. You were just in this space growing up.
Yeah. Or we watch the news on TV every night.
Correct.
We don't think of that as being trauma, but it's routine.
It is.
It's routine. Usually negative energy that comes off of the TV.
Having
news.
Let's say a friend. Let's just say you had a friend growing up all through school whose parents physically abused them. And you saw that trauma of them every single day as they got on the school bus. That's that compassion fatigue. That's that compassion trauma. That's that secondary trauma that we're picking up now as children, because we didn't know how to handle that. We didn't know what to say to our friend. And even if they trusted in us, we didn't go tell anybody, right? Or if we did, it either made it worse for them or we were not believed that that's what was happening to our friend at home.
Yeah.
Right? So that all is unhealed, unprocessed trauma.
Yeah. And it's impossible as a parent to know all the trauma of your children because they are experiencing life on their own.
It's the first time of them being a child, right? It's the first time you're being a parent. There is no rule book, right?
And they're
No
experiencing life, that you're not always there. They're going to school as they get older, and then they have other experiences and friends. But yeah, it's these kids are so tough that if you're a 6-year-old riding the bus for the first time and you make best friends and you finally get to realize this kid is abused or something, and you recognize things, and then whatever happens, you stay friends with them or you distance yourself from them. That trauma exists, and the kid who knew about it just kind of buries it or never even talks about it to their parents. So you would never know maybe that
they're carrying that weight.
That they're carrying this what did you call it? Compassion trauma.
Right. So they're carrying that secondary trauma.
Yeah. So, but then these kids are so tough, and then they grow up, and 10 years pass by, 20 years passes by, and I think there's so much that shapes our childhood and our life when we're that young that some of it we just buried. And there are different ways to dig that up and deal with it and release it. And one of them is, there's EDRM therapy,
Yes.
there's hypnotherapy, there's inner child work where a therapist will guide you through this meditation and bring you back to moments in your childhood that were significant, and you revisit that moment in your mind, but then you also bring in your present self, and you also bring in your future self after you've visualized what your future self is. And then you have a meeting with the people that were involved in the event, and it involves your future self, your current self, your younger self at that time, and let's say your mom or dad or whoever was involved right there. And then you do a little exchange and forgiveness or whatever, acceptance, and then that really helps for some people. There's been other instances where people have come through to get a Tinman coin, and we've let them experience the healing power of Reiki energy, which is an ancient Japanese. It's a relaxation technique, but it's also a release. There's a lot of releasing that goes on.
Yes.
And it can be, I don't want to say violent, but it can be intense.
It can be very intense.
Sometimes screaming, not as common as crying, like sobbing, like really weeping it out and getting it out. But then the body was holding something. Trevor Hall's, one of my favorite songs, Rain Clouds. It's part of nature to hold pain, and it's just like a rain cloud in our mind, and it needs to come out in the form of water, in the form of tears, and it comes out and it's released from our body. And it doesn't necessarily matter if we know what it was that was released. So in one scenario, you can go.
It's not a matter of what it was and knowing
doesn't
what
matter.
it was.
It's gone.
It's just a matter of the release. So like we hold trauma in our hips,
anywhere,
and in our shoulders. Like I've actually been doing a lot of looking into that myself. I'm just watching, and reading about it, and I'm like, gosh, that's phenomenal. Like these. And it can sometimes be violent, like you said, but like not a violent, like physical violent, but like the violent outpouring of all this emotion, like that's been pent up for 20 years, 30 years, 40, like just, and it's insane. Because, like you look at a person and you're like, there's nothing wrong with them.
Oh my God. Yeah. So there's other ways that are absolutely violent purges. And we're talking like things you find in the jungle. You can also find it in the mainland U.S. too, but people think of the jungle as far as like sacred medicines with, the one that's getting a lot of talk right now, Rogan just did a podcast on it, is Ibogaine or Iboga treatment. It's a 72-hour DMT-based psychedelic. There's a natural form and a synthetic form that lasts 72 hours. It's a wild trip, but it is like so effective on addiction. Microdosing of psilocybin is another.
Ketamine is another one that they're looking into.
Ketamine, and then there's the sacred toad medicine, which is 10 to 20 minute experience of 5-MeO DMT. It's a very inward. You say, reach in. There's not many visuals with 5-MeO. It's very much an emotional experience, and my first experience was pretty blissful. My second one was a roller coaster, violent. And I say violent, I was wrestling two other guys, and it didn't feel scary or dark, but it felt like a confusing battle between the ego. And I kind of felt like, this is really what it felt like to me. I felt like I was a ball, and God was tossing me back and forth between his hands, and the left hand was understanding and the right hand was confusion. And every time it went back and forth, it dealt with all these dualities we deal with our egoic mind and our basically the emotional spiral. It was like I was going from here to here to here to here, and then 20 minutes went by and it was over. And they said my experience was similar, and I flailed. I yelled, I screamed. I went back and forth between euphoria and complete understanding to confusion, and a lot of humor actually was in it too. But then there's ayahuasca, which is like 6 to 8 hours, and that is a major purge. I mean, from both angles, sometimes both ends, puking. It can be it can be, but the feeling during it is very much of, oh, the divine teacher's here to give me something. It's either a lesson or it's a release or it's whatever the toad or the mushroom or the mother wants to deliver that day is going. And oftentimes it's different with each experience because there's something else to do or work on or clue us in on. And it's a beautiful thing. And I think that it's the days of that having difficult access to that are coming to an end, and everything's changing with how we understand our emotional bodies, because everything is an emotion, right, that we feel.
Yeah, I think we're probably part of that first kind of like generation of parents that really are looking deep into like our own experiences and ourselves and how that's going to overflow onto our children. I mean, breaking that generational curse and cycle. We're more open to letting them express themselves, whatever that may look like, and then just supporting them through that, and maybe what they're expressing right now as their being and who they are is short-lived. And you know what? But we need just to love them during that process, because what if this is their forever self? And a lot of that, I'm like sexuality, right? For example, instead of going, you're playing with dolls, you're going to make your kid gay by letting him play with dolls and let him paint their nails. No, I'm just making them happy right now. Maybe he's going to be a good dad. I mean, I don't know, but I'm just going to love him no matter what. He could be the garbage man. I don't give a crap. I'm still going to love him the same. Yeah. But I would rather support them through that. And if they change and decide like that's who they are, permanent self, right? And have that self-awareness. Or if this was just trying to figure things out because the only role model they have is a single mom, right? So we love them no matter what, because if it's their permanent self and we've just made them small and belittled them and didn't support them and give them the open, accepting love, what happens as they become adults? Now we have manifested and contributed to that need to suppress who they are. And then in turn, what are we going to do? Unhealthy coping mechanisms, substance use, addiction. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I would want that for my child. Right.
Self-limiting beliefs. We'd like to throw all of them out the window for our kids.
Right. So love them no matter what, no matter what they do. Obviously, yes, when your children are in the wrong, own that they're wrong. Don't do the not my kid thing, but own that they're wrong. Understand why that's happening. So inaction and an outburst is a cry for something deeper. Generally, it's a cry for something deeper that they can't express because they don't feel safe enough to express it, or not because you were not a parent who was willing to listen, but maybe you weren't the right person. So that's where you look at them and go, I noticed your behavior's been changing. You just got in trouble for making fun of this other kid at school. Well, what is that about? What is the need for that? Is there something you're struggling with? You don't have to tell me. I'm okay with that. But you've got to talk to someone else, because this is a behavior that I'll love you through, but we don't accept. So if we look at it like that versus, my kid didn't do that, my kid would never do that, the behavior is going to continue, and it's generally because there's something internally, right, going on. Maybe, it's because they feel like they have to be that way around their group of friends. Oh, that's probably not the right group of friends then. Or they are struggling with their own self-awareness. Like, they feel like maybe somebody on their football team said that they were ugly or that they were overweight, and I'm sorry I use football. I didn't think about that. But whatever. And so now they're going to project that onto somebody else because they're feeling terrible about themselves, but they want to tell dad because dad was the school, the star player. He got him to go to state, and so they don't want dad to look at him differently either. Right. Mm-hmm. So just, I don't know, I could go all over the place with it, but just acknowledging the fact that you're not perfect and your children aren't perfect. And just because they're having a terrible behavior, um, it's not necessarily a reflection on your parenting. Because you could have kids from the same household. One's a meth addict, and the other one went to college and is a professor. They were raised the same, right?
Right. Yeah, everyone has their own
But there's
life to live.
internal struggles in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And if we start paying more attention to, like I said, our spidey senses and our intuition, everybody has it.
Yeah, and having a safe spaces to talk about it, making it so it's not
safe.
there's no stigma attached to it anymore. It's a lot of people like to talk about football and other sports, but
Not all kids are football and other sports.
Right. If it was just made more normal in a school setting, like in your family dinner table, like we're talking about this. And
What was your color today? Was today a red day, a green day, or a yellow day?
yeah.
Green day, I had a great day. I learned a lot. I'm feeling really good about what I took in today. And my energy was good. And I was happy. My yellow day was kind of like, I didn't really want to be at school, but I mustered through it. And I didn't retain a lot of information because my brain was somewhere else. Well, would you like to talk more about where your brain was at? Like, where was your brain that you just couldn't focus? What were you thinking about? Because whatever it is, it had to be important.
Yeah.
Ask those questions. Ask those hard questions.
Yeah. It would be amazing if every kid could have a family that was that open and encouraging to talk about that. And yeah, because it's easy to just get stuck in the routine, small talk and stuff. But
and like families are busy, right? We're running kids to sports. Well, do it in the car.
Right.
Just be open. Have an avenue. Reach in.
So are you going to reach out to the Tinman?
I think I'm going to reach out to the Tinman.
All right.
I am.
Awesome.
And I'm also going to give the Tinman some resources for healing horses.
Very cool. So you had mentioned before, and we don't have a program for this yet, but I told you we would help you, or I would do what I can. You were looking for a dog. Could you talk about that?
Yes. So with what I've got going on, I have spells where I get dizzy and I fall. And my doctor had suggested that I really start looking into getting a service animal because the process is hard.
And Willow doesn't count, or what?
Well, no, Willow is the one that I just rescued.
Okay.
Nathan ID.
Oh, but the training,
the
right?
training part of it. So
you have the service dog. You just need the.
She needs to do the medical alert training.
Oh, okay.
So.
Oh.
Yeah. So
okay.
that's kind of where I could give you all the resources in the world to help a veteran.
Well, yeah. What BJ knows, we know BJ Ganem. He runs Sierra Delta.
Correct.
So he know what to do though. Like, is there a trainer in the area that we can get?
I'm not certain where he's at with that. So
Okay.
I know that Nathan has talked to him, and it's kind of like stay tuned for a little plan, and we're just going to kind of work through this together. Whether Nate's going to show up at Boston Spa there in Cas, and we're going to do a meat raffle with a truckload of meat or whatever. It's a slow process, and it's going to take a while just to find those resources, but they're there. And Willow is very in tune to everyone's emotions and what's going on. And I'm German Shepherd savvy. It's the dogs that we've always had, but
they're amazing dogs. We have one too.
We have 3 now, but it's all we've ever really had, and we'll rescue them all. But the other 2 are older and are so family dynamic that to focus their attention on one person is going to be impossible. I can't rip those 2 away from our children, you know what I mean, and take them everywhere. So Willow, with being one, and knowing the breed, she's doing very, very, very well from coming from a rescue. She sits, she's very treat driven. So sorry, I lose my words sometimes. So we're currently I'm working on her like sitting and staying right where I'm at, and then if I move 2 steps to the left, she has to come sideways with me. So we've been working on that in our kitchen, and then vice versa. And she doesn't bark at the neighbors' barking dogs, which is amazing, because at first she's like kind of growly at them, and I'm like, Willow, sit, and she'll sit, and I'll just tell her no, and she just looks at me like, come on. they're a threat. Let me bark at them. But she doesn't. And our other two don't do that either. So,
Okay, thank goodness they didn't train her to do that.
yeah, no. It's the neighbor's dogs. So like they should bark when it's necessary, when there's a threat approaching. And for her, it's going to be to alert someone else that I have a problem.
Yeah.
You know.
So this is a unique type of trainer that we need.
Yes. She very much needs training that can be for medical alert for seizures.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's find that trainer and do that fundraiser and get it done. I know. I was talking about my stepmom earlier. She is known for gracing people with dogs, and she would be all about this. And I'm going to share the podcast with her. And
I would love to meet her.
We can all set up a party and contribute and make this happen.
I think that's great.
Yeah,
I think it's amazing, and just know that you are doing amazing work in this community.
Thank you.
When I seen it and I went, this is something everybody locally should be on board with, trying to help. And then when I went out there to drop off the donations, and I see teachers from school and I'm like, this is great. This is amazing.
Yeah. In Reedsburg, not just Reedsburg, but Mauston, New Lisbon, Crandon, Baraboo, like,
you're touching lives that you don't even know you're touching.
Well, but everyone is supportive. Like it's, there's a lot of different types of foundations that could be started, but this one is, it kind of makes my job easy.
It's very unique.
It kind of makes my job easy because it's a lot of people don't say no. They want to help. And that Reedsburg has proven that. And I feel so lucky to live here. And I didn't quite feel that until the first Tinman, just to see the whole community come together. It was like, wow. I mean, I should have known. And I've seen it happen before, but when it really hits you home like that, you're like, man, I've just never been more grateful to live somewhere.
And that's when we had our fire. I always constantly telling people, just do the good work and eventually it'll come back in the end. It'll come back. Pay it forward. Every time I've helped you, pay it forward, pay it forward, pay it forward. We had people at our benefit that did not know who I was. I'd never met them, from preachers to teachers, motorcycle clubs, people from different parts of the state, because they either saw me putting resources out there on a public page in whatever county. I worked with saving their family member who was a veteran, or their friend, or my husband's organization, the Friends of Veterans organization that him and his father started years ago, like that constant giving.
It came right back to you.
Man, I never thought I'd have to be on the other end of that. And it was, there's no words.
No, it's such a good feeling.
Words to describe when I put in the good work. It really does come back. It comes back tenfold, and it's still coming back.
Yeah. It comes back immediately, and then it comes back later. It comes back twice.
And every time we've helped somebody, they're like, I don't know if I could ever repay you. I didn't give it to you for you to give it back to me. I gave it to you because you needed it. And maybe someday somebody else will too. And you'll remember that one time that somebody helped you.
Yeah. And it was a win-win, because when you helped them, that made you feel good.
Yeah.
So giving is selfish.
Instead of selfless. Okay.
Well, it's one way to look at it, and then it's okay. We don't need to feel guilty for being selfish in that way, because you look at guilt. It is damn close to death. So let's not feel that.
Don't feel guilt.
And if you do, don't feel guilty about it.
Yeah. I don't ever feel guilty about helping somebody else.
No, but I mean, if you do feel guilty, don't feel guilty for feeling guilty. Tabatha, thank you for coming in. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate everything like that. You're willing to hear me, you were willing to go, this is something we actually do, but let's look and see what we can do to help you. And hearing what you guys are doing in the community, we know sometimes that we're making that impact and that imprint, right? But sometimes we don't understand the magnitude that impact is having in the community.
What's that old saying? The one and random act of kindness has the power to change the world. Is that what it is?
So many lives. I don't remember,
Yeah.
but either way, you're impacting people that I don't think you realize you're impacting. And
Good.
it's great. You and your wife are doing something amazing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
And thanks for being the light worker you are too.
Thank
And thank you for taking a break to reach in, and I hope you reach out to for the Tinman coin. April 1st is when the next round will give out 30 more coins. So
I will definitely consider that. Thank you very
apply
much.
early. Consider is a
Early. I might need a reminder. My brain doesn't work all the time. No, I'm just kidding. I'll put
I
it
will
on
remind you.
I'll put it on the calendar for
yeah.
sure.
And consider, contemplate, don't overthink it.
I'm an overthinker.
Hit the send button. It's easy.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.